Hi everyone, my name is Kayla and welcome back to Kay's Hidden Shelf, a place where we talk about books. And today we're going to be going over my non-spoiler review for The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. This is the first book in the Dandelion Dynasty, and I believe the fourth book is coming out in June of this year, 2022. I wanted to make a separate video for this because there was just too much to talk about in a wrap-up review, and it needed its own time. Now, The Grace of Kings is a debut novel by Ken Liu. It was published in 2015, and I ended up picking this up from my local library as an audiobook. Now, I got about 10% into the audiobook before I realized I was completely lost. I picked it up because I had heard a lot of good things about Ken Liu's writing, and I figured, hey, I've heard about this, it sounds good. I probably should have done more research on it just because I did get lost. So I ended up backtracking, I started over. I also picked up the ebook to go along with the audiobook to make sure I could follow along. Guys, there's just so much in this. There's multiple points of views that we follow, and the world is dense and rich with culture. It is a massive world build. And what makes it a bit hard to follow, at least for me in the first half, was there is plots upon plots of political intrigue. There's a lot of people to follow, a lot of places to follow, and then on top of that, we have schemes upon schemes to follow. So there's a lot in it. It is well done and it is good, but it just made that first half a bit hard to follow with the audiobook alone. Now, the author does recommend using the world map that was developed for the book alongside with your reading. He did say that he developed the map and the book in a way to be used interchangeably and I guess more in an interactive way as opposed to just art in the book. I'll leave a link in the description below where you guys can find that world map as well as a list of characters that Ken Liu's put on their website just to help you in your reading this if you decide to pick it up. So in this, we do follow two people primarily, Kunigaru and Mata Zindu. They're the two characters that this first novel is centered around, and honestly, I really like what Ken Liu did with these characters. We get to know them in such detail, and I'll just read the synopsis so you guys can have an idea of what this book is about before we go any further. Wily, charming Kunigaru, a bandit, and stern, fearless Mata Zindu, a son of a deposed duke, seem like polar opposites. Yet in the uprising against the emperor, the two quickly become the best of friends after a series of adventures fighting against vast conscripted armies, silk-draped airships, and shape-shifting gods. Once the emperor has been overthrown, however, they each find themselves the leader of separate factions, two sides with very different ideas on how the world should be run and the meaning of justice. What I really liked in this is I thought we were going to be diving into the book where Kunigaru and Mata were already friends. That wasn't the case. We actually get to know them as individuals before their friendship develops and getting to see that friendship grow too. So there's a lot invested in this when we're talking about these characters, and Ken Liu does their character work as well as their development so well. It's just a treat to go through and get to know these characters inside. So this is an Asian-inspired fantasy with elements of steampunk, though I'd say the descriptions of the steampunk elements are much more delicate. I don't know how else I can put that. I'd say the description in the synopsis where it says silk-draped airships is probably a good example. Everything seems to be elegantly done in how the world and even the fashion that these people are dressed in is just elegant, guys. It's beautifully depicted. There are moments in this where I actually look forward to the dialogue because there are philosophical moments that are depicted in the dialogues. They beautifully depict scenarios, metaphorical in ways, and it added a lot to the culture as well. There is mythology in this too, and again, this just adds to the culture and the richness of this world. I think it's well done because It does depict the gods in this, but I wouldn't say it's a primary focus, just one of those added elements kind of in the background. I'm not sure how else I can explain that. It's just a nice addition to see how the people interact with one another, their belief systems based on these gods, and how it forms perspectives, different cultures, because there's more than one culture in this world. It's just neat to see the dynamic that the mythology adds. Something else that was really cool in this was the combination of ancient military tactics. So it has that combination of war and battle formations, but then there is invention in this as well. So we get to see the birth of things like airships in it, which was really cool. We get to see how characters go through that level of invention due to pressures in war. Now, this is a book about rebellions and empires, and because of that, there is depiction of war, of violence. There are some pretty dark moments in this. I would just keep that in mind if you're not used to reading that, or that's something you're not comfortable with. I wouldn't say that it takes away or ruins anything, but if that can be a trigger for you, just be mindful of that if you're deciding to pick this up. The other thing is that the author did write this in prose, so that can make it a bit difficult to get into the book, just because the writing style is a bit different to get into. I wouldn't say from my own experience that it had a negative impact, but it was something to get used to. Overall, I think it works really well, but if you're not used to that writing style, or you're particular about writing styles, this might just be a bit of a hurdle to get past. What was challenging for me in this was the first half of the book. Guys, the first half is a slow burn, and that's not necessarily a bad thing because it's not boring, but it felt like an info dump. And on top of the world building that we see, the multiple different perspectives, it just got to the point where I felt like I was having a hard time keeping track of everything. And it didn't make it a bad experience, but I was wondering at one point if this was going to be for me in the end, because I just had a hard time keeping track and keeping up. Now, I will say that once I got past the first half of the book and kept going, I actually ended up binging the second half of this book. Guys, I could not put it down. I needed to know what happened. All of that foundation and building we see in the first half pays off in the second half, and we finish strong in this one too. I am going to continue on with book 2, though I think I'm going to take the reading of it a bit slower with a bit of a break in between books, just because there are 4, and I would like to digest the information of everything I read in the first book before I jump into book 2. Altogether, the things that worked really well for me were the world building, the characters and their development, the situations they get put into, and I also liked the exploration that Ken Liu did of how circumstance and others' expectations of someone can form a person, and how political strains can affect relationships. Those were so well done. Now, like I said, this is political intrigue on top of intrigue, plots upon plots, and it is a lot to follow. If you're used to that and you enjoy books with that immense depth to it, I really recommend this for you. I think you will enjoy this. It does have some moments where I actually stopped a lot of the time to highlight things, and I probably highlighted more in this than any other book I've read, just because there were so many thought-provoking moments included in it. It felt like a combination of reading action, adventure, politics, along with philosophy, and I really enjoyed how Ken Liu put that combination together. That being said, I wouldn't say this is an accessible read. If you're newer to reading in general, newer to fantasy, this might not be the place for you to start, I think there are more accessible reads where you can jump in, but this might be something to build up to later on. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I think Ken Liu did a great job with this overall. Yes, the first half was a slower burn. I had a bit of a harder time with sticking with all of it. However, all of that buildup in the first half pays off later, and he does it all justice in the end. So if you like battle, political intrigue, character development, as well as our world building being so broad and diverse, I think this is one you will like. Give it a try if you haven't already. Now, if you have read some of Ken Liu's works, or you're planning to in the future, let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from you guys. Ken Liu is a newer author to me, so I am interested to keep going and see what other books he's written, what other stories he's come up with. And thank you so much for watching, guys. I appreciate your time here, and it's because of you that I'm here. Guys, I'm just having a blast with this so far. Thank you so much for making it a positive experience. And until next time, take care of yourself, everyone.